My name is Ellen Santasiero, and the title of my story is Problem Pieces. I'm a writer, and this story is about an experience that I had as a beginning writer, a young writer in my late 20s. I was always looking for things to write about then, and one day in my mailbox there was the continuing education brochure from my local community college. And I start looking through the classes, and I saw one that interested me. It was called Closets and Wardrobes. Closets and Wardrobes. And the class description said that we were going to learn the three-pile process of closet organizing, and we were going to get help with the problem pieces in our wardrobes. So things that we, never wore because we didn't have anything to go with it. So I was not the kind of girl at that time who cared about such things. I didn't care about organizing anything. I gave very little thought to how I looked. I mean, if I were to categorize what my look was in those days, I would say that I was like a late 20th century woodchuck. It's always in the outdoors, just, didn't give a thought to what I looked like. So I signed up for the class. The reason I signed up is because I thought, this is going to be hilarious. This is going to be really funny. I'm going to write a spoof about this, all this, ridiculous content. So I go to the class, and I've got my little, reporter's notebook with me, and I walk in and I sit down and I start taking notes about the women in the room and about the instructor. And I'm writing down, what people are wearing. And the instructor was Betty. She had a dyed black page boy, and she was all put together, very, very stylish. And she was very confident. She started telling us about sagging pole syndrome, and about how to keep dust balls out of our shoes. And she told us that women needed both short hanging space and long hanging space, same amount of short and long hanging space in their closets for all the different kinds of things they wore, but men only needed long hanging space for a top coat and a bathrobe. And I was like, okay, and I'm just busily writing all of this down because I think it's hilarious. So Betty worked at a women's clothing store, and so she had with her a box of clothing that she'd brought from the store, and so all these separate pieces. So she started picking them up and mixing and matching them and saying, like, look, you can wear this with this, or you can wear that with that, and then you can, put a scarf around it or a pendant, or you can dress it up this way or dress it down. So, I'm like taking notes about all of this. And so then Betty pulls out this long, sleek, black bodysuit. And I looked at it and I went, oh, that's cute. And I wrote down the price and I wrote down the brand. And then I had several moments of discomfort when I realized that I had, switched from being this, kind of undercover like reporter to someone who was, actually interested in some of the class content. So, so Betty said, for our next class, I want you all to bring a problem piece or two from your wardrobe. So, something you never wear because you don't have anything to go with it. So I immediately wrote down purple skirt. And again, I had this moment of, oh, okay, kind of getting into the class here, whereas before I was just sort of, being outside of it and looking at it and kind of making fun of it. So I went home, and in the time between the two classes, I'm working on the piece. I'm typing in my notes, and I'm writing, and I'm writing about it and really going into the experience. And as I'm writing, I'm remembering that when I was in junior high and high school, I was painfully self-conscious about my wardrobe, and such as it was, and how I looked, and was I fitting in or not? And not only that, I was painfully self-conscious about the fact that I was attracted to girls as well as boys. And that was not something that was going to go over well in my family or in the community that I lived in at that time, 70s, early 80s. So, so in the writing process, I realized that, in my late 20s, that was still a problem piece that I was carrying around with me. So the next week, we all meet at Kaufman's, the women's clothing store, and I bring my purple skirt, and I go up to Betty and show it to her, and she marches me over to this table that has a pile of turtlenecks on it, and she plucks out, with a diamond-studded finger, she plucks out this purple turtleneck, and she says, "Here, wear it out with a belt." And then she marches off to go help somebody else. She was so confident, and it looked great. I was happy. It looked great. I could wear that. And what I really, really noticed how confident she was, competent, and authoritative about what she knew. And I realized that I could only wish for like half of that confidence and clarity about who I was and what I was and how I wanted to live. So the story is about that, but it's also about writing. It's also about the writing process and how I was then just beginning to learn that the writing process leads me, and still does, always leads me to more depth, to more nuance. And in the case of that story, I ended up writing something that was way more interesting and depthful and meaningful than I had originally planned.